for Jason Robertson. He had 3 on Friday night in Winnipeg, and he's got 3 again today here in Minnesota.
Jason Robertson right there of the Minnesota Wild, Minnesota. Back-to-back hat tricks for the 22-year-old on the Dallas Stars, against the Minnesota Wild. 2 empty net goals for Dallas as Minnesota put up a pretty good fight. There he is. First player to record hat tricks in back-to-back games since someone named Alexander Ovechkin, who did it in 2020. Ovechkin is a freak, man. He really is. But shouts to Jason Robertson. What a cool story. The youngsters in the NHL right now are just taking over. I'm not sure when he started in the NHL, but if he's 22, I believe he's been in the league for 2 years, essentially. But wow, good for him. Between him and the rookies in Detroit and Cale Makar and Jack Fox, the defenseman from Colorado and New York, the league is in good hands. And if everybody wants to talk about what's his name in Anaheim, we're not going to do that right now. We'll start off the top with some NHL scores. Got some big news in the NFL, of course, yesterday, if you haven't heard. So we're going to spend a lot of time on that. Before that, let's get to the NHL and NBA. Yesterday in the association, the Lakers, after having that big LeBron game, they lose to the Spurs, who are not very good. The Mavericks beat the Jazz in a game that sort of matters. The Heat beat the Rockets. The Heat are very good. People don't understand how they're good or why they're good, but they are. The Nuggets are hanging around. I don't know, where are the Nuggets in the standings? Let's take a quick peek. Eastern Conference right there. We'll get to the Eastern Conference here in a second. Can't get the microphone in front of my face. Thank you. Who are we looking at? Nuggets, 6 seats. So right now they would play the Warriors. That's interesting because they did just play the Warriors, and they beat them in Denver. Sixers thumped the Bulls, and since adding James Harden, it's like it's what they've always been missing now. The Sixers traded Ben Simmons, who didn't play, and 2 players and picks for James Harden. It's paying off. Joel Embiid, 43 points. Man, he's clearly going to win the MVP. They're able to completely stifle the Bulls with 2 of their best defensive players in the league. That's Thibault and Joel Embiid. And the Bulls, remember, they were in first place in the Eastern Conference a couple days ago. And we were like, but Vegas doesn't like them to win the East. They're like the 5th or 6th best team to win the East. Well, since that's happened, they are now in 4th place in the East and only a half game up on the Celtics. And with a couple more losses, the Bulls could end up finishing 7th place. They're not that far off from 7th place. The Heat and the Sixers, the Heat are far and away number 1. They have a 3-point lead right now on the Sixers. It's not impossible to catch them. The Bucks and the Sixers basically have the same record, as you can see there. In the Western Conference, it's a little bit more convoluted in the middle, but not at the top. The Suns are going to run away with this. Only 13 losses on the year so far for the Suns. They've got a good squad. What can I say? Let's move over to the National Hockey League, the Canadian battle, Oilers and Flames. Flames win this one. Last night, the Leafs beat the Jackets. Panthers over Sabres. The Panthers, the Avalanche just can't stop winning. The Panthers and the Avalanche, they are just effing good, man. They really are. The NHL does points. So the Panthers are only 1 point up on the Lightning. But with the same amount of games played, they are, let me see if I can do my math right, 27 points up on the Red Wings, who are in the middle. They're not at the bottom of the league. They're in the middle. In the Western Conference, the Avalanche have 87 points. That's 6 more than Florida. That's crazy, man. 87 points. That's 16 higher than the next closest in their division. They are just running away with it. The Pacific Division, which is all the Canadian teams on the West Coast and all the West Coast teams like San Jose, Seattle, Edmonton, etc., much closer, much more of a mess. The Kraken are far and away in last place in their division and one of the worst teams in the NHL, but they took a completely different approach from Vegas, which is kind of interesting. They set up their team, their expansion team, to kind of prepare for the future. All right, let's move into some other stuff, other interesting news. The Wall Street Journal is reporting on this thing that I can't believe nobody heard about this. This surfaced over the weekend as the Ukrainian stuff went down. NBA star Britney Griner, she was that Baylor woman who was just awesome if you watch college basketball. She's huge. When Baylor won those championships, she was a big part of that. She was arrested during the offseason, and she was detained for drug charges in Russia because she had a vape pen. So this is according to the Wall Street Journal. It was reported by Ben Cohen. She's been held in custody since she arrived in Moscow from New York. They don't know when it happened. It happened in February. Authorities say, quote, authorities say that they are launching an investigation into opening a criminal case. The smuggling of narcotic substances on a substantial scale in Russia carries a sentence of potential imprisonment for 10 years. This is happening as Russia invades Ukraine. I can't believe that nobody heard about this. But I guess you don't get a phone call on Russia, and if anybody heard, nobody cared. Some stories just slip through the cracks, man. It's crazy. It really is. I can't believe this is happening. Other news happening yesterday. Amazon has reportedly picked their color analyst to join whoever they get in the booth, which apparently is going to be Al Michaels, but we may not know. And that person is going to be Kirk Herbstreit. Now, this has not been confirmed by Kirk or Amazon. It has been reported by Peter King, who is getting older. So, I mean, no disrespect to Peter. We'll see, I guess. There he is. Look at Kirk. Put on a couple of good, healthy pounds. What's up? He looks like a fuller man. This is reported by Peter King of NBC Sports on his Monday Morning Football in America column or whatever it is, just his kind of thoughts on stuff. It's not really coherent writing. It's just like a podcast in word form. He said that it's going to happen. They picked him, and it's going to be fine. And I got to be honest with you, the team of Chris Fowler, of all of the movement this offseason, the breaking up of Chris Fowler and Kirk Herbstreit is a goddamn travesty. But Kirk, I think, is the best color commentator in the game right now. In the last 2 years, because of COVID and because of back-to-back Monday Night Football games on ESPN, Kirk and Chris have done an NFL game, one NFL game per season, and they're magical. They're great at it. It's going to be tough because he never played in the league. So I don't know if people are going to love that, but actually I take that back. I'm not 100% sure if he played in the league. It doesn't really matter. He wasn't even that good in college. But he's great at this. He really is. College Game Day's fallen off the face of the earth. Fox and Barstool Sports have better shows than College Game Day. It's not what it used to be. It's not the same level of excitement, and this too shall pass. Okay, let's get to the big news of the day. If you had your head in the sand, Calvin Ridley, a superstar wide receiver for the Atlanta Falcons, who took essentially the entire year off. I want to say 16 of the 18 games he took off for mental health reasons. He said he wanted to step away from the game. His social media has been pretty quiet. He appeared like this is something that he really wanted to take care of. In the last couple of weeks, teams have inquired about trading for Calvin. Nobody knows why. The teams would want to trade for him because he's good. Atlanta, why they'd want to give him up, but they're fielding calls, but Atlanta did not engage with any of that. They didn't go anywhere, and the reason is because they did it in good faith. They can't trade him because they knew he was being investigated by the league. Why was he being investigated by the league? Because he was betting on football. Now, the takes are flying, right? So he's bet on football. He got caught. FanDuel hires a company to vet everybody to make sure there's no funny business going on. This company called Genius found him. He was betting on football, and he has been subsequently suspended for, quote, at least 1 year. Now, the NFL has this going on with Stephen Ross, the owner of the Miami Dolphins, allegedly, did you like that? Pull my glasses off there. The owner of the Miami Dolphins, Stephen Ross, allegedly offering money to head coach Brian Flores to lose games. So the league has a competitive issue situation happening here. Calvin indeed bet on the Falcons, and while he wasn't in camp for the Falcons, he wasn't there. He didn't know. He does have inside information or the access to inside information, and the league is going to want to nip this in the bud, so they suspended it for a year. Calvin kind of went off on Twitter. I bet $1,500 total. I don't have a gambling problem. I guess we might as well bring it up. I learned from my L's. Kind of crazy that this happened. So the takes are flying. Is he the bad guy for betting on football? Yeah, you can't have it. Like you cannot have players betting on the game. The problem is that he's the first one that got caught doing this. He got caught like a nincompoop because he changed states. Now, FanDuel, if you bet on FanDuel, and say if you have a FanDuel account, say in Pennsylvania, and you go to Florida, gambling is legal in both states, they don't give a shit. They don't want that. You can bet in your state. They don't want people screwing around and figuring out ways around the fences in states that sports gambling is illegal. So he got caught, and now the NFL's got to set a precedent to tell players, you can't fucking do this, man. Cannot bet on the game. And I think there are people who are like, that's not that much. It's not that big a deal. They're going to string him up by his thumbs. And I think he might be able to appeal and get back on the field, but they're going to be like, then this is also a message to all the other players, like, we're watching you. Now, it has been confirmed by former NFL players. They all play fantasy football. Not all of them. A lot of them play fantasy football. And they do it for stakes way higher than $1,500. Players bet on sports all the time. Nobody are bigger sports fans, for the most part, than sports players, like the athletes. We can't bet on the games, and especially on the team that you're influencing. His biggest stupidity is betting an 18 parlay. Man, you're dumb. That's never going to hit, dog. He was up for a contract extension that would have been worth $11 million. He is a superstar. On any given week, he's between the 7th and the 15th best receiver in the NFL, sometimes a little bit lower than that, sometimes a little higher. It's like he's a really elite. He's not like the mega elite, but he's elite after that, if that makes sense. He's like the second tier of elite. It's going to be tough to see. I mean, it's going to be tough to watch because players are going to have his back. It doesn't seem like that big a deal. And there are like a lot of domestic and sexual abuse and crazy things happening in the NFL. People don't care about that, but the league cares about the league. So you can't have players betting on this. And to me, what is really the real story here is what are they going to do to Stephen Ross, the guy that was essentially perhaps incentivizing a coach to lose games. It's not going to be good. And for the most part, I can't blame the league. I mean, I'm on board with a very harsh punishment here. You simply cannot have this. You cannot have people betting on the sport that they play, especially on their team. It's wonder if are they allowed to gamble at all? They're not allowed to gamble on sports at all. See, that's something that needs clarification too. Because if you want to bet on basketball or baseball, are you just not allowed to? Got to figure that out. I think they're gonna. This is a very touchy situation for the National Football League, and they really are gonna have to figure all of this out. The Coach K shit show created an enormous muddy patch of dirt called Krzyzewskiville that was worth so much money for people to camp out for his last game. There were a dozen students per tent. The Wall Street Journal is reporting on this. With a dozen students per tent and hundreds of tents next to Cameron Indoor Stadium, the economy of Krzyzewskiville was so booming that math majors looked into the value. The property inside the tent village would be appraised, this is based on demand, at $20 million to camp out to watch Coach K get his ass kicked by North Carolina. That's going to do it for this episode of Interesting to See. If you have thoughts on the matter, post them in the Spotify thing. If you want to talk about Calvin Ridley betting on sports, there will be a prompt in the Spotify. If you listen on Spotify, there's a prompt. You can scroll all the way down. You can pop, and you can leave your thoughts. Maybe I'll put a poll question in there as well. You suspend it for a year. It's going to be a big deal. All right. I'm also available on YouTube and Twitter, etc., etc.